it's Stewart A. Swerdlow.
And Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow.
And this is the news podcast for expansions for the third week of November 2015. And hopefully, as you can see in the video, we are having the worst November snow in 100 years.
Wow.
In fact, in Chicago, there are over 250 cancellations at the airport. And the snow is still coming down till tomorrow. And even though here in the Midwest we are used to having snow in even October and November, this is one of the worst ones ever. Thank you, global warming. Gee, it's a good thing that AccuWeather said that October and November were the warmest ever in recorded history. Did they look out the freaking window? Seriously. I don't know, really. They're so ridiculous. It's snowing like heck out there, and it's cold, and it's just piling up, and it's not stopping. So yes, it's going to be a very interesting time. As you know, I told you last time that my flight from Bali was canceled because of the volcano, and then this week I was supposed to go to New York to see my children and grandchildren, and those flights were canceled. In fact, Delta Airlines texted me an hour before I was going to leave that my flight was canceled and booked me another flight. So I changed everything, my car pickup and everything for the later. And 15 minutes before that, they canceled that flight. And then they put me on a flight to Atlanta. I don't want to go to Atlanta. I don't like Atlanta. Sorry, people from Atlanta. And so here we are. And even if I had gotten out,
You probably couldn't have gotten home.
I couldn't get back home.
Because now we have too much snow
Now we have too much snow now.
All the flights there in Chicago have been canceled.
So, can you imagine?
I'd be home alone again.
Yeah, you'd probably thrill dancing in the street naked, probably, right?
In the snow?
Probably.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So anyway, people, what's up with me and the flight cancel? Volcanoes, wind, snow, what the heck?
Storms.
Seriously, I'm sure somehow it's all your fault. Somehow.
Well,
I'll figure it out.
I have answers, but
somehow,
none that you want to hear.
Anyway, I've rescheduled my trip to New York for December. How smart is that? December, that's like blizzard season. Anyway, people, you know that I've been speaking to you about what's going on in Paris and actually all over the world. And many of you know Apollo, our radionics wizard, and the expansion's Greek expert, even though he's from Crete. Crete does think they're separate from Greece. I spoke to him yesterday, and he had some very interesting things to tell me. Because he said that the Paris event on the internet is being called the Trojan Horse because of the refugees, and I've explained this in September, that I said the refugees are not refugees, they're a bit of a terrorist, it's like a Trojan horse, yeah. So, in Greek mythology and history, the Trojan horse is very significant because Helen of Troy was kidnapped by Paris of Troy, Troy, yes, and Helen was of Greece, and she had to be rescued and returned. Now, in Greek, according to Apollo, and Apollo, you will clarify this if I'm making errors here, but Troy is also called Helios in Greek, or the sun. Now, in the Trojan horse was Achilles, who was part of the rescue team, and we all know about the Achilles heel. And some terrorists were found with fake Greek passports. And in addition to all of this, there was a story in the news this week that they are trying to remake the Colossus of Rhodes, who was Helios, or the sun god. Do you remember when we were in Rhodes, and they said that that area where the harbor was this? They're going to rebuild that.
Why? I don't know, but it's also interesting the Syrian refugees came in through Greece, and Greece, of course, was the first country to have its economy destroyed.
Purposely. Exactly. So people, these are the clues. Paris, Helios, Trojan Horse, Greek mythology, Helen being kidnapped, Achilles, Rhodes, the Colossus, all of these are Illuminati symbols. Put the pieces together, people. I'm going to try to do that. Apollo's trying to do that. Maybe some of you could put all these pieces together and we can come up with what the next step, what the next event will be.
Well, the other thing we don't want to, I mentioned this last week, I'm going to mention it again for those of you who may not have seen last week's Paris Par ISIS.
Well, that's another story.
Okay, are you going to talk about that?
No. But I will say, I had mentioned privately to some people that it's been reported when these terrorists attacked the restaurants and the studio venue in Paris, they shouted Allah Akbar.
You mentioned that last week. It's a very excellent point.
However, the real term is Allahu Akbar. And that was stated recently, unfortunately yesterday, when the hotel in Bamako, Mali was attacked. These terrorists shouted Allahu Akbar, which is the normal Arabic term.
Or the correct
term. So, I'm going to suggest that the ones in Paris were not even Arabic. And in fact, it's been reported that these so-called terrorists in Paris never even read the Quran. They smoked, they drank, they cavorted, and they had nothing to do with fundamentalist Islam. They were programmed and they were possessed. And remember that word possessed, because I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And the other thing is, if you've noticed, on all the videos, and I've looked at these for the last couple of years now, I've reviewed them, all of the videos of where these terrorists, for example, recently, they said they're going to attack Washington, they're going to attack New York, they're going to attack all these places. They always point their finger up like this. They have their finger up, like they're pointing to heaven. This is a programming trigger. This is a programming activation of sleeper cells who are going to watch this video and they see this finger pointed up, and that means go into motion. So keep that in mind, people, as well. There are many demonic possessions which we see on the news, and I'm going to give you some examples right now. Just this week alone, there was a father of 5 who raped and killed a 7-year-old daughter of his friend.
Let's say he's been accused,
He was
because
accused.
he's
Well,
claiming he's innocent.
Well, there's a reason why they arrested him. And he was at this sporting event with these parents, and within,
30 minutes.
30 minutes, not even.
Yeah.
Took the girl away, 7-year-old girl, raped her, killed her, dumped her in a river or a lake or something like this. Next one. A man killed 6 people in a family because they bought the land he was squatting on, and he was mad at them.
And these young kids, not only the adults, but the young kids he killed.
A woman in New York City killed her childhood friend and cut her baby out of her and took the baby as her own.
The baby was, I think the woman was 8.5 months.
8.5 months pregnant. Another woman put her 2-month-old daughter in a microwave and killed her. A white teenage boy, broke the jaw of a 79-year-old black man in order to make a video that would go viral. A man stomped on the chest of a 1-year-old girl he was watching and crushed her to death because he thought her mother was taking advantage of him. And then, all of these people, I just have to tell you, this is not normal behavior.
No.
These are people who are programmed and possessed by lower astral entities that seek to absorb the energy via fear, destruction, and sexuality. This is, people, part of the end times programming activations.
Which we talked about on our prophecy
And I put in my
pay-per-view
books.
webinar, yes.
Murder, ritual sacrifice, sexual abnormalities, mass destruction. All of this is part of the Illuminati agenda to create fear and religious fervor in order to fulfill the goals of the global domination. That's really what's going on here. And I have some more stories.
Okay, I have a bunch about ISIS. Do you want me to do that first before you go into these?
Okay.
Okay, so let me do my ISIS stories first because I want to continue to
I'll
tie
just
all
watch
this
the
together.
snow coming
Okay,
down.
yeah, there's a lot to watch.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to mention that in February of 2015, the Daily Mail reported that ISIS threatens to send 500,000 migrants to Europe as a psychological weapon in a chilling echo of Gaddafi's prophecy that the Mediterranean will become a sea of chaos.
Well,
now, this
it is
was
already.
back in February 15, they're talking about it. And the Italian press claimed that ISIS is threatened to release a huge wave of migrants to cause chaos in Europe if they are attacked.
Look. You
So
think
they-
the governments don't know that?
So they were
They're
forewarned.
doing this on purpose.
And they told people. They said the letters from jihadists show plans to hide terrorists among refugees.
They said it.
Yes. And then they say that this was back in 2011, Gaddafi predicted that Libya, if attacked, would lead a surge in number of migrants heading for Europe.
And they've done it.
And they did that, so they were already talking about it. They knew what was implanted in these people, and which we've been talking about. So keep that in mind. Then, this was interesting to me that ISIS doesn't want to be known by this name anymore. ISIS stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria.
Right.
The group has also been known as ISIL, which stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant.
Which includes Lebanon and Israel and Jordan.
That's right. They will also sometimes be called the IS. The IS, of course, as we know, is a big programming trigger.
There's also a space station.
Yes, ISS. Yes, so all this ISIS, remember Par-ISIS in Paris, is in front of you all the time. Anyway, they say that these acronyms, what they have in common is that they legitimize the group's power by referring to it as a state. So now they're saying that members and leaders don't like the new term that's being called. I'm going to let you say it.
Daesh.
Okay, and the Arabic full name is?
Al-Dawa al-Islamiyya fi al-Iraq va al-Sham.
Okay, so the U.S. officials, so starting the word Daesh.
Yes, but Daesh in Arabic is a low-level word.
Right, so they don't like that word. And so now they're saying that they're reporting that they're going to cut out the tongues of anyone who uses that name.
Yeah, how unusual for them to say that.
Right. Well, anyway, I just thought that was interesting. And then I was reading that somebody wrote a very interesting article. This was on actually Huffington Post that's saying, did the Prophet Muhammad warn us of ISIS? And it's saying that apparently 1400 years ago he prophesied that a time would come when nothing would remain of Islam but its name, nothing of the Quran but its word, and that many mosques would be splendidly furnished but destitute of guidance, and that in these latter days the true spiritual essence of Islam would be lost. Religion for the most part would be reduced to a ritualistic compulsion. He foretold that the clergy would be corrupt and be a source of strife during these times.
Now, isn't it?
Yes, it's in end times. He went on to describe terrorist groups such as ISIS would try to hijack the Islamic faith. He said at this time of dissension there would appear a group of young people who would be immature in thought and foolish. They would speak beautiful words but commit the most heinous of deeds. They would engage in so much prayer and fasting that the worship of the Muslims would appear insignificant in comparison. They would call people to the Quran but would have nothing to do with it. The Quran would not go beyond their throats, meaning that's, they would just say the words. He went on to describe these people as, quote, the worst of the creation. And then it says there's another tradition in the book of Kitab al-Fitan, reported by Caliph Ali, who is the fourth successor to the Prophet Muhammad, that describe these people as having long hair and bearing black flags.
Oh, that's interesting.
Claiming their hearts will be hard as iron, and they would be companions of a state, Ashab ul-Dawla. Interestingly, it says ISIS refers itself to the Islamic State or Dawla. The tradition further mentions that they will break their covenants, not speak the truth, and have names that mention their cities. The ISIS Caliph, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, comes to mind. And then also the Prophet Muhammad, it said, furiously and painfully described these evildoers and admonished Muslims to be aware of their evil and to fight it. Whoever fights them is better to Allah than them.
Well, that's interesting.
Yep, he says that he explicitly warned the people of imposters and entrusted the people to root them out. And he said that intelligent people would see his wisdom and who would unite against both ignorance and extremism. And I want to remind people that this extremism does not extend to all Muslim people.
But we have many Muslim friends.
We have many Muslim friends.
They're all good people.
They're very good people. And then Donald Trump is claiming that he wants, and here in the U.S., yes, to double down on mandatory database to track Muslims.
Yeah, who said that? Hitler said that for the Jews.
That's right, that we should have mandatory registration, that we have to do this, that we should have new restrictions on civil liberties, enhanced surveillance activities, including inside mosques. He does not reject the idea of requiring Muslims to get special identification cards noting their religion,
maybe armbands, maybe.
All back to Nazism. And the last thing that I wanted to report, which here on a separate page, this is a new show called The Man in the High Castle.
Oh, yes.
Now, it's interesting.
It's a movie, isn't it?
Well, it's actually a television series.
It is?
It is.
Wow.
It debuted in January of 2015.
Really?
It was called Amazon's Most Watched since the original series development program began. And apparently, this is based on a 1962 novel. Now, this is very interesting to you specifically because it's the name of American science fiction author Philip K. Dick.
Watch your language.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, because the Montauk Chronicles movie won the Philip K. Dick Award in New York City.
That's right. So now here we go again, back to Montauk again. It says the story is an alternative history of the world in which the Axis powers won World War II. The U.S. has been partitioned into three parts, and you've talked about this before. The Japanese puppet state of the Pacific States of America.
Right.
Then it says the Rocky Mountains, west of the Rocky Mountains. That was west of the Rocky Mountains. Then there'll be a Nazi puppet state, the eastern half of the former U.S., and the middle area called the Rocky Mountain States is the neutral buffer. So I found that exceptionally interesting as well. So that's what I have to say.
You know why it's the Rocky Mountain the Buck? Because they all have smoking pot.
Yeah, well, that's true. Anyway.
They're like, whatever, man.
Yeah, so I just found that very interesting. So go ahead with your stories.
Oh, okay, I forgot.
And then I have more stories to finish up with.
All right, anyway, there's a lot of stories about Kennedy these days.
Yeah, I report on that last week, of course.
But, of course, there's a story by Boole Frazier, who were friends of Lee Harvey Oswald, who drove him to the Dallas Book Depository in November 1963. And he saw Lee Harvey Oswald put a long brown package on the back seat, and he thought it was curtain rods. But within hours, Kennedy was dead, and Oswald was arrested, and the rifle was found in the depository. However, Frazier says he does not believe that Oswald killed Kennedy, and he is convinced the shot came from the grassy knoll, which is supported by claims by a jailed mafia hitman that claimed he pulled the trigger, and that's James Files.
That's what I reported on last week.
He said he was on the grassy knolls, he pulled the trigger, that killed Kennedy in the motorcade, and there were other people involved. There was a conspiracy to kill the president because he had made some powerful enemies in the government. Now, Files, who's 72 years old now, has even gone so far as to claim that his mafia boss, Charles Nicoletti, was in the book depository in downtown Dallas, and that the assassination was plotted by the CIA and the mafia, who we know are all the same.
Yes, and of course, that's what I reported on last week.
Yes, and these claims were made to a Dutch filmmaker,
yes,
but the FBI said they're not credible.
Of course.
Why aren't they credible? Because it doesn't fit into their version of history.
No, they're not going to tell that publicly,
Right.
obviously.
Now, also, did you hear about a winged object flying past the sun? Now, remember I said earlier about Helios. They're putting this Helios sun image in the news, if you understand the symbolism.
Yep.
And these images were spotted by NASA and shows a floating object close to the sun, captured by these cameras, and a YouTube video created by a UFO chaser uses the images and says the mysterious object is more than just malformed pixels that NASA is claiming, but believe it to be a ship of alien origin. Now, conspiracy theorists believe that it might be, according to an astronaut on ISS, here we go again, who tweeted a picture of a UFO hanging ominously in the top right-hand corner over the Earth. The picture was shared by astronaut Scott Kelly, who spent almost a year in orbit, and now many people believe that it was Kelly's attempt to tell the world about the existence of aliens. It also appears to be very large and constructed, but NASA refuses to provide individual explanations of the UFO sighting. So it's very suspicious.
Yeah, and they keep bringing up all these, the ISS space station, all the UFOs that are captured, and then NASA keeps saying, either it's not one or they just totally ignore it. So again, I think that's keeping that ISS in front of the public and this is just another way of doing it.
And then just a quick story about no global warming that came on the news. Lake Superior's freezing and revealing ice caves that have been blocked for 5 years. Do you understand that? It's a place called Apostle Islands, Wisconsin, which is just across the lake from us here.
But I think that's, again, the Apostle Islands is going back to the Crusades, what's old, Jesus, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So they're getting all these things
interesting is,
out there.
Again, I'll go back to AccuWeather and National Weather Service saying it's the warmest October and the warmest November. Okay, Lake Superior is freaking freezing over already in mid-November. So obviously there's no global warming. Now, Mexicans. You know that I love Mexico, right?
Right.
More Mexicans are leaving the United States than moving in. How
Did they
about
say
that
why?
one? Well, they said there's a reversing of the flow of a half century of mass migration. Now the Pew, I like this one, Pew Research Center, who the heck are they found that slightly more than 1 million Mexicans and their families, including American-born children, left the U.S. for Mexico from 2009 to 2014. During the same year, 870,000 Mexicans came to the U.S., 1 million left the U.S., so resulting in a net flow to Mexico of 140,000. The era of mass migration from Mexico is at an end. This is very interesting because it said that the net migration between the two countries was near zero. More than 16 million Mexicans moved to the United States from 1965 to 2015. I'm going to use more than that. That's just what they counted. Also, that 11.7 million Mexicans living in the U.S. last year, which is down from 12.8 million in 2007. Again, these numbers are not correct because there's a lot more. There's more like 20 million or more. But the idea is, how sad is it that Mexicans think the U.S. is worse than Mexico and went back?
Well, that's why I don't think it's a sad thing. I think that they're seeing the writing on the wall.
It's like, they think, screw this place, we're getting out of here.
Well, they have no GMO down there. They have much better food. They have a lot of things. It's a beautiful, beautiful country.
It is a little dangerous. I was there
just
recently. And
there's a reason why it's dangerous. That keeps the people out. That's why. It's a beautiful country with a lot of things that are very hidden
and it's very mysterious.
That's just my exact word I was going to say. It's very mysterious down there. So they don't want people down there investigating it. They want them up here where they can control us.
Yeah.
The control system is in place here, not down there yet.
Yeah. Now, what did I say about South Carolina all this time?
Well, we've been talking about it.
Civil War coming, 2016. Well, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham is warning South Carolinians that there's a threat of a nuclear attack on South Carolina because nuclear warheads are being shipped to South Carolina from a Texas Air Force base, and it's off the record in Black Ops.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes, and he also warns that because there's a lack of military action in Syria, it could result in a nuclear bombing in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, why they would choose that?
In Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah. There it is again.
It's not
from
one of the most major cities, but it's where the Civil War started.
Yeah.
So they could be using that as a symbol. And he says South Carolina could be nuked.
Let's see.
We'll see. Not that we'll miss it.
No, well, let's hope that doesn't happen.
No. Anyway, let's go to Mars.
No,
I talked about
Mars
Phobos.
is in the news all the time.
The moon Phobos is artificial. I've told you that before. Now they're saying that there are groove marks that crisscross the moon Phobos. And that, according to NASA, they believe it's a reflection of a structural failure, like cracks in the foundation of your home. And these spatial cracks will result in the destruction of Phobos. Now, does that sound like a natural object?
No.
No, it doesn't. And according to NASA, it says, we think that Phobos has already started to fail, and that the first sign of this failure is the production of these grooves. And that's according to Terry Herford of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, which I thought was actually in Houston. But it's orbiting 3,700 miles above the surface of Mars. Phobos is closer to its planet than any other moon in the solar system. Now, that doesn't make sense because it would crash into Mars if that was true. So it shows it's artificial. But here it says, making things even worse for Phobos is a belief that its interior could be a rubble pile surrounded by a later powdery regolith, whatever the hell that is. So it says it's not exactly a rock or solid moon. So they're telling you it's hollow. Hello, people, artificial object. They just said it.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that they've hinted. Now they're getting more specific. I think that's very interesting.
So obviously, and what in addition, they said the same fate. I don't want to use my finger because I'll think I'm.
That's true. Don't do that.
The same fate awaits the Neptune's moon Triton, which is also slowly failing and falling towards Neptune.
Now, how can they say moons are failing?
Because they know they're fake, and they know for whatever reason they're
Well, maybe they're imprinting.
disintegrating their orbit.
But maybe they're imprinting us over our own moon, which is also fake.
Yes. So our solar system is loaded with artificial moons. Much alien interest in our planet and our solar system because we are within the borders of a group called the Network. And I will refer you all to my Alien Agenda conference in 2014. Can they get that on?
Yeah, they can get that online.
Please look at that because I explained that in there.
Yeah, very good. Okay, anything else?
Well, just future things for next year, but I'll
All
wait
right.
till you're done.
Yeah, let me finish my stories. So speaking of things that are off-world, now this always gets me. There's a secret mission to the water world Europa that NASA is keeping under wraps. If it's a secret mission, why is it on the news, right?
True.
Okay,
Who
so there's
leaked
a
that
secret
one out?
mission. Okay, so apparently in February, NASA said that it was investing $2 billion on a mission to Europa, which is a tiny moon of Jupiter.
Right.
Okay, right? So now they're claiming Texas Republican John Culberson, who says that it's critical that we land on Europa. He is the chairman of the House Appropriations Subcommittee with the oversight of NASA's budget because he said there could be life there. So he's going to, they claim that NASA has not officially announced that they're sending a lander because Europa is supposedly covered in ice. So it's a
So
little,
is Michigan.
so it's a challenge for them to land on it, but they're saying it's critical that we land on it. So again, I think that's kind of interesting. Now this is from the Pope, because I always like to talk about the Pope,
Wait.
as you know.
God bless you.
Yeah. Anyway, the Pope is calling Christmas a charade.
No. The
Now,
Pope?
it says that because of the atrocities in Paris, it's made the festivities meaningless in a world which has
Well, they are
chosen war
anyway.
and hate. Now, the other thing about the word charade reminds me that it rhymes with the word crusade. So we've got something going on here, but why the Pope would call
crusade
Christmas charade, yeah, so I thought that was interesting.
Interesting.
Okay, now I'm going to move on to health because this is something that I have reported on in the past. It's called helminthic therapy. Do you remember what that is?
No.
That is therapy that where they use parasites supposedly to treat a variety of different diseases. Right now there's research for Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease called IBD, multiple
sounds like
sclerosis, and asthma. Now, I reported, and I remember maybe a year or so ago, about people going to Mexico to get implanted with parasites for.
Yeah,
do you remember the inflammatory bowel disease?
Right,
okay. Now they're claiming that parasites can boost the fertility in women. Because they studied 986 women in Bolivia who had parasites.
Not everybody in Bolivia is
I know. And that these women had an average family of 9 children. And
that's all?
That's all.
Wow.
And 70% of the population is infected with the parasitic worm. So they're saying that these are intriguing possibilities, but more work still needs to be done before they can recommend parasites for successful pregnancies. Now, remember, there are a lot of things in our society that are parasitic, and I talk about this a lot in my blogs.
Like the government.
That's exactly correct. So if you have parasites on the outside, it helps to anchor the non-physical into the physical if you have parasites within. So all of this, in my opinion, is taking the society down, the wrong road. But keep your eyes on this Helminthic therapy, because it's obviously not going away.
No.
They're continuing to say you need parasites in you, which is totally bizarro, to quote you. Okay? Bizarro. Now, judges are ruling that frozen embryos don't have the right to survive a divorce.
That's not. See, I don't believe in that.
Well, I'm just telling you what
That's
they
not
said.
right.
If you have life, now they're saying you can kill it.
That's terrible.
The California judge has ruled against a divorced woman who wanted to implant frozen embryos created with her now ex-husband, who objected to their use. So he's claiming they have to be thawed out and destroyed.
See, but here's the thing. From what I remember, that woman had surgery or cancer she cannot have.
Yeah, she cannot have it.
So, as long as she signs a thing that says she doesn't hold her ex-husband responsible for any financial anything, why can't she have them?
Well, I think that's kind of a really challenging moral decision, because he's going to have children out there then that are his, and if he has any other children, they're going to have half-siblings, and so on
but
and
it's
so
not fair
forth.
to that woman who no longer can have children.
That's why I'm telling you that this is a very challenging question. I don't think there are any
I
rights
think that's
or wrongs.
wrong. I think that's wrong.
I think it's very
I think
challenging.
as long as she doesn't hold him responsible for anything in the future, she should be allowed to have it.
I just think it's a very challenging thing, but again, they are destroying life, and that's what I'm putting forward out there, that when we do these embryonic type of things, and we do IVF and whatever, I think there's a lot of moral responsibility that are never addressed. And I always say, just because we can do something, does that mean we have the right to do it? And these are issues that we talk about in our classes that we teach.
Right.
Because there's a lot of responsibility out there, and we need to look at things from all different perspectives. So just like we're talking about, what does this mean for us as a society? Now, this was an interesting story which caught my eye. I don't know if you saw this or not, that a doctor pulled the baby out by its feet during delivery and decapitates infant.
Why?
Now, that word decapitate, as we all know with the things that are going on with ISIS, is becoming more and more ingrained in our society as a whole, the fear of decapitation. Apparently, this was on the front page of one of the news services I was reading, and this happened in India. Now, a lot of things happen in India.
A lot of bad things happen.
They do, and strange things. People born with a lot of extra appendages and so forth. So India also has its own mysterious thing. But the way that they phrase this, you think, oh my gosh, it was right down the street. Well, apparently this doctor used a wrench and a thick string to pull out the baby, and as it came out, the head came off. So, of course, the nurse who assisted and the doctor are now being charged for murder.
Well.
But the point is they're putting that word out in front of you. I mean, you can't help but go see this story and
These
think, where did this
people
happen?
shouldn't be doing those things.
So, but they make it sound like it happened next door to you, and then you find out, well, it was in India, where, of course, they don't have a lot of good hospital care in many places, so we don't exactly know.
They don't care about people, because there are over 1 billion people. Life doesn't mean
But we
anything.
don't understand even where it happened and the conditions under which the doctor had to work. In my opinion, it still has to do with decapitation.
That's terrible.
Now back here to the U.S., Yellowstone, which we talk about a lot, and it is also a very ritualistic place because, as you know, it is a volcanic caldera.
Yeah, I remember when we went to not to be gross, but to the bathroom there, and there was no bottom of the toilet. It was just like the sulfur pit.
I don't remember that.
I do. I'm like, oh my God. So what if I fall? What if the bathroom
Where
collapses?
did you go to the bathroom anyway?
What?
Because I don't remember that.
Well, I do. You were waiting outside.
Okay, so I didn't go in. I don't know where you went. And maybe
I could have fallen into a caldera.
I don't want to but anyway, Yellowstone is a very huge, again, ritualistic place. And now this year, the park is proposing to kill 1,000 bison.
Yeah, I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because the bison are full of sulfur poisoning, and they're afraid that people, shoot them and eat them and get sick. They'll find out that what's going on in Yellowstone is dangerous, and they don't want people to know.
Okay, because they're claiming that is because Montana doesn't like them wandering.
Oh, bull crap.
And the thing that's interesting to me is that they're going to kill the females and the calves this year. So I have a lot of
people want to kill them.
I have an issue with that, obviously. And they say, well, they're claiming it's Montana's fault because they're wandering out, Montana gets upset, but I don't know that I believe that.
The people in Montana are brain dead.
I believe your story. I don't believe the news story. Okay, the FDA has just approved the first genetically engineered animal food for consumption in the U.S. market. This is from a company called Aqua Bounty Technologies, for their first genetically engineered Atlantic salmon. How can they call it Atlantic salmon if it's genetically engineered? Grows twice as fast as its conventional farmed counterpoint. So now they're telling you that farmed food is conventional.
So it's like Salmonzilla.
So they're saying that it's safe and as nutritious as non-genetically engineered salmon.
Of course they'll say that.
There are, quote, no biologically relevant differences in the nutritional profile. But with all of this, the FDA is prohibiting these genetically engineered salmon called Aqua Advantage salmon from being raised in the U.S. So if they're so wonderful and they're so safe, why are they being prohibited? They're grown in tanks in Canada and Panama, and apparently the fish are sterile, so they can't reproduce. So therefore, they're not going to be able to breed with conventional salmon if they break free from their tanks.
There's a clue there about how safe they are.
Yeah, and it says they will not require a GMO label, so you won't know.
Brilliant.
Okay?
Thank you, Canada.
Now, this is a story I got just for you, and I thought this was perfect. This is a story from the coldest city on Earth. Do you know where that is?
It's in Siberia.
Yeah, and you know the name of the city?
Yakutsk.
Yeah, right. And you know what happened? Did you read that story?
No.
Okay, but you're right on with the coldest city on Earth. Apparently, somehow or along, and we don't know when this happened because they don't tell us when it happened, but guess what was found in the permafrost?
People?
No. 2 remarkably well-preserved remains of lion cubs that are about 12,000 years old.
Aww.
These are cave lions. They're a species that no longer exists. And guess what? It says that they're maybe a week or 2 old when they died. Their eyes weren't open. And they were well-preserved with complete, with fur, soft tissue, and even whiskers.
Are they going to clone them?
Well, they don't say that, but of course they're going to clone them. First of all, we're going to have mammoths now that no longer exist.
Yeah, but I like the little baby lions.
Now, these aren't going to stay babies if they clone them. They're cave lions. They no longer exist, so now they're going to bring that forward.
I would like to see those.
So I thought that was very interesting. That story is just for you.
Thank you.
Okay, now listen to this one. There is now a new Barbie commercial which is starring a boy for the first time. Now, first of all, there's an issue with parents and Barbies, right? The big bust and the little waist and all that. But because even with saying that Barbies, are not good role models for girls, now they're going to use them as a role model for boys. Barbie.
What happened to Ken?
Well, you know what? That's the interesting thing, because they don't talk about Ken. They only talk about the Barbie. Now, why don't they have a boy playing with a Ken doll? But instead, apparently there's a fashion line called Moschino that they say the likes of Madonna and Katy Perry use. So, of course, I don't know about Moschino because I'm not up there in that income stream category. Mm-hmm. That's a famous fashion designer, apparently, and that echelon of people. And it says that this Moschino Barbie has leather power suits, gold ropes, paparazzi shaming sunglasses, and they will sell between $250 and $700. However, there's this boy, and they show him, he's got his hair cut, and I will tell you, and I'm sorry, and I don't want to offend anybody, but the stereotypical gay man, which I don't necessarily believe in, but that's what they are using as a preteen boy that shouts out, "Oh, Moschino Barbie is so fierce."
What does that mean?
Well, I guess it's a good thing. But it's two girls and a young boy. They're so excited, and it says social media was full of praise for the young man. So, anyway, I just, again, think that's really crazy. And it's saying that apparently Target is following the trend to remove, quote, boy and girl toy sections from their stores. So it used to be, boy toys, girl toys, and now it's just
all toys.
all toys. You can go for whatever.
It's the island of misfit toys. Remember that?
I remember. Anyway, crazy. Now, and here's another one just for you. This is my last story.
Okay.
You're going to love this one.
Okay.
Okay, it says that attitudes about aging are shifting, and a new survey says middle age does not end until 68 years old.
Yay!
And it says the point at which people consider themselves to be old is extending further into the late 60s as people recognize that they have decades of active life ahead. Now, we have talked about them.
Especially if you're an immortal vampire.
We have talked about them at working toward extending the years of human life, because, of course, many years ago, of those who read the Bible and those who don't, that the humans used to live several hundreds of years.
Did you read the Bible?
I read a lot of things.
I read the whole thing.
I know you did.
Twice. 17 times, actually.
I read it many times.
Many, many times.
So anyway, I would just want you to be aware of that, because I think that's interesting. Now, back to us. I appreciate all of you who are liking our Facebook page. That helps. And those of you who have seen your YouTube video on CERN, Blue Beam Project, and Portal to Hell
Yeah, I'm shocked.
is now approaching 320,000
Plus, who named it that?
views. I don't know, but anyway, and there's more than that. That's just on the one channel, because it's all over the internet. It's like on everybody's website and
Knocking me
YouTube
over
channel.
with a feather.
It's out there. But anyway, you have a lot of really good visual clips. I want to remind people that in January 2016, we have our Hyperspace Oversoul Extravaganza Week coming up. And that is right around the corner, because the holidays are over and people go, what do I do now?
Well,
okay?
the holidays haven't really started yet.
But they're going to be over as soon as they start.
It looks like Christmas out there now.
And then people are going to say, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to tell you that here in Michigan, it is a perfect time to do this work, because we go inside. It's quiet. It's winter months. I absolutely love our winter class. It's a week long. We have people already registered from all over the world. If you're thinking about coming, this class, which is our most intense class of the entire year, happens one time
and
a
it's
year.
going to be very different than before.
It's going to be better.
So if you're taking it before, it's going to be different, because I have a whole different bunch of topics.
Because we're not going to be doing our fall annual conference in October. So if you want
spring.
No, we're not going to do our annual spring healing conference either. We're combining a lot of things into this January class.
Yeah.
The door is going to open for you. You can walk through it. If you don't walk through it, it's not going to open again until January of 2017. So we want to be mindful. If you want to come here, this gives you great tools for moving into what's happening. As you know, on the blog, hopefully you're a member of our site. We're working on safe space. We are working on self-leadership. We're working on a lot of different topics on the blog, which continue to help drive you inside of self. So if you want to grow under hyperspace oversoul terms, then you want to be a member of our site, and you definitely want to come to our January class, because that's filling up, and we try to keep that kind of small, on the smaller scale. Okay, what else on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to remind people that they should come to the January class, because just this week alone, I'm talking just this week, I have been asked to do seminars in Iceland, Germany, UK, Australia, Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, Czech Republic, Indonesia, and Thailand. So that means like there's nothing here.
Well, it means that Stewart's going to be traveling a lot this
So
year.
it's like, if you don't come in January, I'm not going to be available.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's a longer wait time for personal consultations and reports to get done. So if you're interested in those things, be sure you get.
Plus, I didn't even mention
Yes.
our thing for the Clear Energy Tour in Italy.
Yeah, we have a Clear Energy Tour in Italy, June of this coming year, 2016. That's in the works. We don't have the details listed out. So we have a lot of things that are happening. Days with Stewart, again, are very limited. If you're interested in those, or private classes.
I want a date with me.
You have a date with you. I have a date with you.
You do?
I have a date.
When?
When you're here.
Oh.
So if you're interested in these things, you do need to let Patricia know as soon as possible, because our calendar is filling. We're creating our first 6 months of 2016. As soon as those are solidified, we'll go on to the next 6 months of our calendar. So ASAP, customer support at expansions.com. Same with the classes. You must register ASAP, because they fill up quickly, and then going to be left out in the cold. So we don't want to do that. We want to bring them in the cold.
It's really snowing hard out there.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
No, Michigan is a fabulous place to learn. We're very interdimensional.
And it's only November.
Very interdimensional energy here.
Yeah.
So that said, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, also, again, you know that I was stranded in Bali for my birthday, and I had anticipated coming home to all of my listeners and viewers sending me gifts, and I got 0, okay? What's up with that, people? Well, that's all I have to say.
All right. With that said, like our Facebook page, join our membership site, come see us in January. We have lots of interesting things to share with you.
Yeah, so that's it for me, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.